Welcome back to my channel, Ragamuffins. My name is Raggy, and today I am bringing you a tier list in which I am going to be rating, in any old order for any reason, my favorite early birds from Pokemon. So if you don't know what an early bird is in Pokemon, every gen there's a new bird Pokemon that's introduced that you are intended to find pretty early on in the game, and this is called the early bird. I don't think they ever actually use the word early bird in any of the Pokemon games, but it's just kind of like a communal thing that we've all come to understand. Some games have more than others, some have like just the one, but in this list I'm going to be rating from S through to D, just my favorites for any old reason. I'm going to be rating them in every evolved form that they have, so get ready for that. Starting off this list, we do have Corviknight introduced in Sword and Shield, and as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but Corviknight is like the second Pokemon, or the second possible line of Pokemon that is just a straight up flying type. Most of these Pokemon on this list are actually normal flying type, or at least flying type with another type. But Corviknight is different. He is just a straight up flying type Pokemon. And before Sword and Shield, the only Pokemon that we'd actually seen like this, I believe, was Thundurus, who is a legendary Pokemon. So for the first time, we have a non-legendary Pokemon who is just a flying type Pokemon. So that is a big deal. For that reason, among a few others, I'm actually going to put Corviknight up into A rank. He looks cool, he looks like a knight, he fills that niche pretty well, and he's a crow, which is like, we've only seen in like one other Pokemon, that being Murkrow and Honchkrow. But this is a whole new take on it, and I love it. Then we have Corvisquire, who he evolves from, and I'm going to put that in B? Just because he's not quite as cool as Corviknight, but it's the obvious progression. There's nothing wrong with him. I definitely wouldn't use this thing if it didn't evolve, though, so it's got that going against it. Fearow, I'm going to put up into A rank. I feel like this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I've always had an affinity for Fearow. The interesting thing about Fearow is that it's released alongside Pidgey's lines. So you've got Spearow and then Pidgey, but the difference is that Spearow evolves once into Fearow, and then you've got Pidgey who evolves twice, but that takes considerably longer. And Fearow is not quite as strong as Pidgeot, but he is definitely stronger than Pidgeotto. So the choice to get Spearow or Pidgey at the start of the game kind of is determined on, do you want a generally stronger Pokemon earlier, because Spearow is noticeably stronger than Pidgey as well, or do you want a much, much stronger Pokemon later? And Fearow is good for that niche. I think the problem is that aesthetically he's kind of ugly, and that kind of forces some people to just decide to get the pretty looking one that is Pidgeot, but there you go. Then we have Fletchinder, and Fletchinder I'm going to put in the same vein as Corvisquire. If this thing didn't evolve, I wouldn't use it, but it looks pretty cool. I like its coloring. It is a fire type as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure the fire typing was introduced with Fletchinder, not with Talonflame, but I like that it is a fire type. It is a very cool and unique addition to the early bird genotype, for want of a better phrase. Then we have Fletchling, and Fletchling is just going to go down into D. Unfortunately, compared to Fletchinder and Talonflame, Fletchling is actually very, very boring. He's even just a normal flying type Pokemon, so there's not a lot about this guy to really keep you invested outside of what he evolves into. Then we have Hoothoot, and I'm going to put Hoothoot up into A rank. Hoothoot is such a cool and unique idea on the early bird archetype. He is an owl. He's got like the clock face. There's a lot about Hoothoot that is unique and completely different from every other early bird in the game. And I love that about him. We love unique, cool designs, and he looks like a Pokemon. I remember when Gen 2 was released, I was crazy about Hoothoot for a while. Noctowl is going to go in the exact same spot for the exact same reason. He looks very unique, and there are not a lot of Pokemon based on owls. As far as I know, Hoothoot and Noctowl may be the only ones. No, we do have Rowlet. We do have Rowlet in his line. But before that, we had Noctowl and Hoothoot. And Noctowl, he's just, in a different way, he fills the same niche as being a cool, unique take on an owl Pokemon. So I love that. Then we have Pelipper, and I am going to put Pelipper up into B rank. Aesthetically, Pelipper is kind of gross looking to me, but I do like that he is a flying water type. So similar to Fletchinder, he fills a new role in the early bird starter pack, if you will, by giving you a water type option, which in Gen 3 was a pretty cool thing if you didn't pick Mudkip at the start of the game, so I love that. Then we have Pidgeot, and I'm going to put Pidgeot in B rank. Maybe it's just because I begrudge it for taking some of the popularity away from Fearow, but I'm not that crazy about Pidgeot. I have used one competitively and just for casual play. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't do a lot to hold my interest, and that might be because it is so drastically similar to Pidgeotto, who I am going to also put in B rank because there's actually nothing wrong with it. I actually prefer Pidgeotto's design to Pidgeot's, if only because Pidgeotto looks like a middle stage evolution of a Pokemon, but Pidgeot, if Mega Pidgeot was what Pidgeot just looked like, I would have probably liked Pidgeot a lot more. Pidgey, I have to respectfully put Pidgey in B rank because he is like the OG bird Pokemon. Released alongside Spearow, but he is the original. He is what everyone thinks of when they think of a bird Pokemon. And while he does literally just look like a bird, he does not really look like a Pokemon per se. It was early days when they came up with these designs, and if you go into it, there's a lot to appreciate about Pidgey. I'm going to put down into D rank Pidove, and I've always hated this about Pidove. Pidove has got to be the most generic bird Pokemon that there is. He is a normal flying type, and he literally looks like somebody just drew a pigeon without intending to draw a Pokemon, and that's what I hate about him. There's so little to like about this Pokemon, if you are me. And I know some people love Pidove, and it's because he's cute, but cute does not make a good design. Not necessarily. It has to mesh with the themes and the stats and everything. You can't just make it cute. It has to make sense. Then we have Pikipek, and Pikipek is going to go into C. I like him more than Fletchling and Pidove, but outside of that, he's kind of boring to me. I know when Sun and Moon came out, I saw this Pokemon, and my thought was like, I'm probably not going to use this Pokemon. And guess what? I was right. Okay, next on this list, we have Rookidee, and I'm going to put Rookidee up in B rank, right with Corvisquire. Unlike Pikipek and the other first stage of the bird starters, the early bird starters, whatever you want to call them, Rookidee, if only it's just because of his color, but he's also kind of a round boy, which is similar to Hoothoot, a relatively unexplored design choice for early bird Pokemon. He looks like a bird, but he is very unique. I like that he's got the big black eye tip things. It's very much his own thing. There are not a lot of elements on Rookidee that are recycled into other Pokemon, so I like Rookidee, if only for a design perspective. Then, alongside Fearow, I'm going to put Spearow, and I already kind of talked about it, but Spearow was just an option early game in Gen 1. If you didn't want to be stuck with Pidgey as the weakest bird option from the get-go, you could have opted for Spearow, who was objectively stronger and a smarter choice early game. So, there you go. I love Spearow. Possibly my favorite bird Pokemon from Gen 1. I don't know. That's a lie. I love Zapdos, but whatever! Anyways, in S rank, our first S rank in this list, and I am going to put Staraptor. So Staraptor introduced in Gen 4, I feel like he is due for a lot of love. We recently had the re-release of Diamond and Pearl with the remakes, and it's kind of disappointing to see that Gigantamaxing wasn't carried over, Mega Evolution wasn't carried over. There wasn't anything really carried over that could have created more love for Staraptor, who I think is probably the most underrated of the bird starters. I know this guy gets a lot of use, I know he's got a lot of love, and I know that pretty much everyone who played through Gen 4 used him because he was just generally a very viable option to keep around. But I love his design. I love the swooping hair design over his face. Similar to Corvisquire, it is a very unique design to himself. It might just be the aesthetics, but I loved using this guy. I loved his ability Intimidate. That was very helpful. I'm going to put Staravia, ironically, down into B rank. There's nothing really wrong with him. I like him mostly because of his evolution, but I hold good feelings about him for that reason. The funny thing about him is that he has this face where he looks absolutely just clueless, but his ability is still Intimidate, so you throw this thing out and somehow the opponent gets intimidated looking into the eyes of this no brain at all. So there you go. Starly, it's a C. It's a very simple design. It looks like someone just drew a bird. I think his eyes are cute, but there's not much to say about that either, unfortunately. Then In A rank, I am going to put Swellow. I know that Swellow is a lot of people's, like, not a choice at all. Like, of all of the early bird Pokemon, Swellow and Taillow might be the most overlooked. But the thing is that Swellow has guts, I'm pretty sure, and this guy can surprise you. If you put a Flame Orb on this guy with guts, he can take out some really big opponents very quickly. He's very much a glass cannon, but I like him because he is viable competitively. He's got a cool design, but on top of all of that, no one expects it. And I always love being able to use a Pokemon that no one is expecting who turns out to have good results. So I like Swellow. Then we have Taillow, and I'm probably going to put him in the exact same vein as Starly because it does just look like someone drew a bird, and competitively there's no point in talking about it. You could say that this was a baby Pokemon and I would have just believed you, so there you go. Then we have Talonflame, and I'm going to put him in S rank next to Staraptor. The thing I love most about Talonflame is how useful he was when he was introduced in Gen 6. He has the ability Flame Body, and back in Gen 6 you still needed to use HMs to get around. So you could teach this guy Fly, and have Flame Body on him, which meant that you could do your egg hatching if you were breeding Pokemon. You could get it done in half the time, and then you didn't even have to swap out Pokemon. You could just use his Fly ability to get from place to place while doing all of your breeding and training and making competitively viable Pokemon for the post-game. So I love Talonflame. On top of that, he is the spitting image of a falcon. He looks cool. He's got a great type. Competitively viable. This might be the best early bird in the entire series, possibly. Let me know what you think. Then we have Toucanon, and I'm going to have to put Toucanon down in C rank. Suffering from what a lot of the birds in this list suffer from is he does just look like someone drew a bird. In this case, a toucan. There's not much to say about it. It's literally a toucan. I don't know much about this guy competitively. You don't hear him talked about much in the meta. There are generally better options. Sorry, Toucanon, but your line is, like, of all of the Pokemon, this guy might have, like, the most underwhelming line in my book. Then we have, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either Tranquil or Unpheasant. I'm pretty sure this guy is just Unpheasant. He is the evolved form of Pidove, and I'm going to put him right next to Pidove. If only because I associate him with Pidove, and that may not be very fair, but that's just how I feel. I am just as likely to use this guy as I am to use Pidove, and that is to say not at all. So there might be some very niche, awesome use for Pidove and Unpheasant and that. And if there is, definitely let me know, and I might make a correction in a future video. But until then, this guy who looks like someone just drew a bird is very uninteresting to me. And yeah, sorry. Then I am going to actually put down in D rank as well. I'm going to put Trumbeak, and he is the evolved form of Pikipek and then turns into Toucanon. And what's stupid about it is that I believe he is supposed to be a woodpecker, but he turns into a toucan. That's dumb. That's dumb, and it doesn't make sense to me. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's not meant to be a woodpecker, but he's definitely not a toucan, my guys. So there you go. Apart from that, I just don't like his design, and similar to a lot of the lower-ranked Pokemon here, he's not very memorable to me. You never hear about him used in the meta. He doesn't have any outside of battle uses, really. He's just there to fill the role of being a middle stage bird Pokemon. Honestly, I feel like they could have completely just cut out Pikipek, just have Trumbeak, then have Toucanon, and that would have made sense. It would have been like Taillow and Swellow. It would have made more sense to me, definitely. I feel like Sun and Moon did not need a 3-stage early bird, but I guess they had to fill their quota. I don't know. Then we have probably Tranquil, if not Unpheasant. I am going to rate this guy as a B. Tranquil is the only early bird that I can think of that has the nuance of having 2 possible forms based on its gender, which is a theme we see explored with a lot of Pokemon. But he is the only early bird that gets this. So that's pretty interesting in and of itself. As far as I know, in Black and White, Tranquil was generally as useful as pretty much any early bird would have been, especially if you were just using him for like the main game. But outside of that, I don't think this guy is ever talked about in the meta. He's not really used. He doesn't get a Gigantamax. He doesn't get a Mega Evolution. He doesn't get anything. The only thing this Pokemon ever got was different appearances based on its gender, which is fine. If that's the niche it wants to fill, if that's what its gimmick is going to be, then that it's fine. It can have that. It lands itself a B, a very generous B rating, I will say, and there you go. Lastly, on this list, I am going to put right next to Pelipper for the same reasons as mentioned before, Wingull, as being a early bird option that is also a water type option. It's great, especially in Gen 3 or the remakes of that game, when you had the option to get a water type, a decent water flying type Pokemon early game, especially if you didn't pick Mudkip. Wingull is fine. I begrudge it a little bit because it's kind of the Zubat of the sea, especially with the fact that it can use Supersonic. But outside of that, it's a cool design. Definitely, like, I appreciate that it is based on a seagull. So, like, that's very unique, and we love that. We love uniqueness. That's what we love. And on that note, these have been my favorite early birds from Pokemon, from the entire series up until now, that is Sword and Shield. I know that Scarlet and Violet is out, like, now, pretty much, but I haven't actually dipped my toes into that game yet, and they are... Whatever early bird is available in that game, if any, is just not in this list, so there you go. In any case, if you enjoyed this video today, then please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to share with your friends and hit the bell icon as well so you can get instant updates anytime there is a new upload. In any case, comment your suggestions as well for other content you would like to see. And until next time, you have a good one, Ragamuffins. I'll see you next time.